Hey everybody, it is Sunday afternoon and today we're going to take a yard tour, but it's going to be a little different than our normal yard tour. We have been getting lots of deer damage. That is to say that the deer have been munching away on a lot of our flowers. We also have a groundhog that lives next door and has also been munching away on a lot of our plants and flowers. And I have a deer repellent company, and so today I'm going to be spraying my own property. I use this Ryobi battery powered electric backpack sprayer. It makes it nice and easy, and you have to do lots of properties in one day. Well, you know what, we're going to go start on the far side of the yard. We're going to hit the gardens over there, and then we're going to work our way back across all of these. So maybe in a day or two I'll get out here and we'll do a proper yard tour with a better camera. You can see we got so many of the flowers that are in bloom right now, so we'll be able to come around and get a little bit better of a look at all this stuff. We'll have a look at my pond here. And then of course we'll have a look at the gardens over there. So I might as well start with this bed here. I can see some tips eating off here, some hosta eating down here. I don't know how much you can see right there. All this hosta's been eaten down. All those flower heads are gone. So this is the deer repellent I use for my customers. And I start with Bobbex, and I use the commercial Bobbex. Got a lot of damage over here on this side. So I do highly recommend the over-the-counter, as I like to think about it, the regular Bobbex that you can buy at your, I don't know where they sell it, at the garden center or wherever. You might find a dealer that sells Bobbex in your area. But I think the Bobbex works great. The Bobbex commercial works even better, obviously. See, this is a brand new hydrangea we just put in the ground. That's got a bunch of damage on it. This hosta is new back here. That's got some damage on it. So I actually take the Bobbex commercial and then I add my own additional ingredient to it, which supercharges it. And for now, at least, I'm going to leave that additional ingredient my secret ingredient. It is a commercially available agent, but I'm not sure whether or not you would need a sprayer's license in order to apply it, and therefore I'm not going to necessarily just recommend it without knowing that. But it is safe to use. It's one of those odd agents that is regulated but is also harmless at the same time. Strangely enough, it is a product that's used in products for children and pets, and yet it is still EPA regulated, and so therefore it may require a sprayer's license. So I don't know. Anyway, it's a really effective ingredient that adds an extreme bitter component to the deer repellent. So the deer repellent is based on the idea that deer are not strictly herbivores, but they're mostly herbivores. They will eat meat occasionally, and that's why having the bitter component is a bonus, because just having the meaty components is not always enough. And so the way the deer repellent is based, it's based on the idea that deer are mostly herbivores, and therefore this has egg protein in it. It's got some liver protein, a few other proteins that are animal-based proteins, collagen, a few things like that. It's got some fish oil, some cod liver oil, and all of these things are designed to not really be on the menu for a herbivore's diet, and therefore it tastes kind of nasty to them. It also has a fairly strong peppery component, and that peppery component will help push the deer away as well. But I have found that additional bitter agent that I've added really just supercharges it and kicks it over the top. This has been my most successful season in the 15 years that I've run my company. This is the first summer season that I've been using this new compound, and this has been my most successful season by far, as far as how much, you know, reduction in damage. It's never perfect. I can never stop the deer from doing any damage. Again, there's nothing harmful or toxic or anything about this. It just doesn't taste good, and therefore if the deer are hungry enough, they will still do some kind of damage. I mean, if you think about being in a starving situation, if you had to, you would eat earthworms or cockroaches, or, you know, just because something doesn't taste good. If you're hungry enough, you will still eat it. And that applies to this repellent as well. There's nothing toxic or harmful or dangerous about it. There's nothing that physically prevents the deer from consuming it. It just doesn't taste good to the deer. So with a sufficient amount of feeding pressure, the deer will still wind up doing some damage. This year, however, as I said, with that bitter component in there, it really, see these tips are all missing, that's all deer damage. And I may be sneezing and coughing here in a few minutes, because this also, as I said, has a very peppery component, and when you start spraying a fine mist of it out in the air like this, it usually doesn't take long for me to start sneezing and coughing. In fact, I'm kind of surprised I haven't already. All right, let me get this top section done here. We got a couple of little spots we need to go back there and hit that I'm aware of that I missed. The deer will eat this liriope, this green, like, looks like grass, but it's not actually grass. This is a dogwood tree, and the deer will most definitely nibble on dogwood. So we'll get the dogwood sprayed. This is a burning bush. And most people know it by the name burning bush, but a burning bush is a type of euonymus, and euonymus are big favorites of the deer. So I always spray the burning bushes because they tend to get hit pretty hard. There's nothing in that bad, and then we'll hit these when we come back up, and I need to come back down here and hit one or two things. All right, that should be good for over here. Hello, squeaker. Meow. Boy, you can see all this damage down here. All that's deer damage. And we also, as I said, have a groundhog that lives right next door. So that could be groundhog damage as well as deer damage. See how all this damage, all this stuff is chewed off of the lower part? That's groundhog damage. The deer always come in from the top. See all this? This is deer damage. The deer come in from the top and munch down, whereas the groundhog is down here eating upwards. So we're getting both of them, and this repellent should work on both of them. This should be just as effective on groundhogs as it is on the deer, but we'll see. Another burning bush. Got a lot of burning bushes. Of course, almost everything on our property is gourmet deer food. Got some sedum down here. This is another more ornamental euonymus. That's what most people tend to associate with euonymus. So we're going to do this bottom section first, but we're going to start here and go around, and then eventually we're going to finish up by doing this whole top section. But by then I'll probably have to get a second sprayer pack and refill. So let us start down here. And we're just going to blast through most of this. I'm honestly not sure if this loose strife here gets damaged or not, but we're going to go ahead and spray it because why not? These are hydrangeas. I know the hydrangeas get damaged. More lilies, daylilies. Daylilies always get damaged. The coneflowers will get munched, but the bee balm and any aromatics will not. If you've got stuff like thyme or sage, stuff like that usually gets left alone, at least by the deer. I can't say for groundhog. I'm not an expert on groundhogs. I just happen to have one in my yard. I feel a little more on firm footing telling you about deer behavior than I do groundhog behavior. But usually your aromatics are safe. Any kind of bee balm or any kind of balm really that's going to have that really fragrant smell, the deer will tend to leave that alone. So you can see how all this is chewed, but it's chewed down on the bottom and around the sides rather than down on the top. So that's all groundhog damage. One of those coneflowers right there. And then we got salvia in here. I don't know if the groundhog will eat salvia, but I know the deer will, so we'll leave that. Get that sprayed. Got more salvia here. Lilies. Now, while the ingredient I have in here is very, very low toxicity, it is a little more toxic to aquatic life than it is to other stuff. So I tend to be very careful when I spray around bodies of water that have fish. I have customers that have koi ponds, and I usually have to be a little more careful when I spray around the water than I used to, now that I've been adding this new ingredient. But so far, I haven't had any issues or seen any changes, and I haven't had any issues with any my fish that I know of. Alright, so we got phlox, we got coneflower, got a lot more of these tiger lilies and more phlox and coneflower. Alright, now we're going to start here and work our way over and around. And I really don't think we're going to get all the way done this on one sprayer. So we'll start at the point here, and you can actually see we got deer damage all the way up to the point. This is so much stuff to cover, it's almost worth just getting up on top of the hill and setting it to stream and just spraying over the whole area. But even then, I still don't get full coverage. I still have to come down here and spray as far up as I can, so that when I spray down from the top, I still get everything all the way up into the middle. Because remember, you and I might see this as sort of the edge of the garden, but there's nothing at all that stops the deer from just walking right on through and eating from one end to the other. Not too worried about all this green hosta. We got a lot of that, so having deer munching a little bit of that's not that big of a problem. The only problem I have with that is the fact that if deer are still finding food, they're still going to come in the area looking for food. I often have customers that'll tell me, you know, well, can't you just spray this, this, and this, and you know, I don't care about those other things. And I always explain to them that I can, but as long as that's all I'm spraying, then the deer are just going to keep coming here looking for food, because they're still going to be eating all this other stuff. If I spray all of it, it will train the deer that there's no food here, and eventually they'll just stop crossing through your property, you know, and we'll change the deer's behavior overall. And usually that can be successful. It all depends largely on well, it depends on whether or not the deer already cut through your property because it just happens to be on one of their thoroughfares. You know, deers tend to move in the same patterns all the time. They tend to go the same places and follow the same trails and walk areas and stuff. And so if your house or your property just happens to be where the deer cut through, they're going to keep cutting through whether they find food there or not. Now, if your property is a property where the deer are coming over, and they're coming over because you've got this smorgasbord and there's a special reason to go out of their way to go find all that food. That's where we can really have a good solid impact. You know, you start spraying for a while, you really change the idea that there's food over there. This hydrangea right here, this red one's a brand new one. I just planted that a few days ago, so definitely want to make sure I'm getting that sprayed. And so once you break them of the idea that there's, you know, food in a given area, especially if it's an area that they're already going out of their way to get to, they'll just stop going over there. And then it's just a matter of maintaining. You know, you can see I'm starting to get down to the bottom of the sprayer here. So let me go top my sprayer off, and then we'll come pick up back here where I left off. So I'll see you in a minute. All right, everybody, this is what we are using. And now that I know where we've stopped, we don't necessarily need to go right back to where we left off. We can do the driveway now, and then we'll work our way back up and around. All right. Sometimes with this sprayer, if you run it down and get air in the line, when you refill it, you gotta sort of work it, ease it back up into full spraying again, but we're back up to it. This is a lot of forsythia, and the deer will eat the forsythia. There's only so much I can do. I'm not going to spray everything. It would just cost me way too much money. This repellent is not exactly cheap, but it is really good and it is really effective. And so this is some Rosa Sharon. I do have a lot of Rosa Sharon, so that has not bloomed yet. We'll go ahead and spray some of the more easily accessible stuff here. This is mostly just weeds. And then down here we tend to get a fair amount of deer damage because we don't obviously spend a lot of time down here because it's the bottom of the driveway. And you can see all this is chewed down. There's a lot of damage here. This is all hosta that you can't even see anymore because it's pretty much gone. It is Sunday, so there's no need to check the mail. And we got some daylilies and stuff here, but they've already passed. They're done blooming, so there's no sense in me wasting my deer repellent. You can see all the damage on that hosta there. Most of this is just weeds. Fern does not get eaten, so if you like fern, fern is deer safe. Ornamental grasses are also deer safe. So if you like ornamental grasses, you can always plant them, and the deer will not bother them. Remember, deer are browsers, they're not grazers. You may see them in your yard, and it may look like they're eating the grass, but they're actually picking through and they're eating little weeds and clovers and things like that. Deer do not eat grass, so they don't eat ornamental grasses either. You can see a lot of damage through here. A lot of the flower spikes have been nipped off. These are brand new hydrangea trees we just bought last year. And so far so good. I've been keeping on top of spraying these. Either when I come home from work or before I leave, I'll get those sprayed real quick. This is another one. This is a little more of a bush than a tree. But likewise, it's a brand new hydrangea that we just got. All right, now this bed has a lot of our interesting daylilies in it. Got some balsam right up front here. That's a type of impatient. Of course, the hydrangea, deer love hydrangea. And And the daylilies, the deer love the daylilies. Now we usually don't get a lot of damage this close to the house, but we have had damage up this close to the house, so it's worth coming up through here and spraying. And we got this hydrangea right here. We're gonna make sure we get sprayed. We do like our hydrangeas. We just bought several, in fact. I'm not even sure what a lot of these plants back here are. It's a lot of this stuff my wife planted. I'm not even sure what it is, but I like it. Got a hydrangea back there. We're gonna make sure we get hit. Little hydrangea in the corner. Got these lilies, this rudbeckia, petunias, these lilies here. We're not going to worry about hitting right along side the house there. We're also not going to worry about really spraying any of these daylilies. They're kind of past their prime. They're not that important, but we will hit this island here because we have all sorts of stuff going on in this island. It's not just the hosta. We have a lot of other stuff coming up in there too. And you can see we're getting damage across here, getting damage across here. Again, we're going to go ahead and leave this alone, but we will hit all of this near the driveway. And this spotted green and yellow plant is called a Cuba, and the deer do love that. That's I call it evergreen. It's green and yellow, but it stays like that all year round, and the deer will munch away on that in the winter time. So a lot of we do have some echinacea up here, echinacea being the coneflowers. But we have the rudbeckia, which is very closely related. In fact, they've come out with a new hybrid that we want to get, but we have not picked up yet, called echinacea. And it is a hybrid between the echinacea and the rudbeckia. And it's really pretty. I think I put a little more pepperiness in this batch than I did in the last one. Alright, we'll hit these couple little beds here, and then we'll move around across the top side of that bed that we finished up on. And once we're finished there, we will be done. I often joke with my wife after I get done spraying. I always tell her about the bill that I'm going to be issuing her. I never actually have done an actual estimate for myself of what I would charge myself to spray this property. I'm guessing it would be upwards in the neighborhood of $300 a month, something like that. I have other customers that pay between $150 and $175. I have one that's $185. Most of them are between $125 and $175 though, and most of them are considerably smaller than this. Only on a very few of them do I have to stop and refill my sprayer. And even then, it's only certain times of the year, like now when everything's just lush and full in midsummer, and you know, I might have to get a second pack filled up, and then I'll use maybe half of the second pack. So this, we're going to go through all of the second pack, and I'm not even going to hit a lot of the stuff that's up here. I'll hit some of these bigger, more prominent hostas you can see sticking out, but I got a lot of hostas all through there. We got a bunch of hostas back here we're not going to worry about. Again, I just can't afford to keep going back and refilling my sprayer and spraying over and over again. So I try to hit the main beds, I try to hit the important stuff, and then like I told my wife, after this month, you know, as we move into midsummer, we'll move into August. For the most part, when the hostas are done blooming and the lilies are done blooming, we'll be kind of finishing up. We won't have a whole lot left to spray, so I'll be skipping all that stuff, and I'll just be sort of focusing on the hydrangeas and the other sorts of flowers that are finishing up for the year. And then we'll move into the winter months, and we'll worry about spraying the azaleas and the rhododendrons and the evergreens and, you know, all the winter type plants that the deer focus on. And we've actually been getting a fair amount of damage in this bed too, especially across the top here, where the deer just sort of move through. They come in this corner of our yard and they move up through that garden, and then they move across the yard, and then they move not around this garden, they move through this garden, and then they move up through, and then they go out that corner of the yard. So they literally just sweep our entire garden all the way through, and they hit it from one end to the other. It's pretty rough. And so just last year was the first year that I actually have had to spray my own property. I have been spraying deer repellent for 15 years now, 16 years I've had this company. And last year, like I said, was the first year I actually had to spray my own property for the first time. And then it was only spot here and there. It wasn't bad, and it was only on stuff we were really concerned about, like the new hydrangeas we planted and, you know, plants like that. We weren't worried about just every old thing. This year it's gotten so bad that we actually sort of have to spray everything. Well, that's what we're doing today. My approach had been sort of hit or miss. On days when I'd come home from work and I'd have a, you know, half a sprayer pack full, you know, I would just come out in the yard and I'd spray a bed, and I'd just use up what was in the sprayer pack, and I'd try to remember where I left off, and the next, you know, a week later I'd come home with half a pack, and I'd try to pick up and spray some other areas. And so that's obviously not an effective way of doing it. And so today I just decided, before I get out on the kayak, I'm going to go ahead and spray the whole property the same way I'd spray a customer's property. We'll get it done right, and then that way I know just everything is sprayed right here for peak summer. Again, moving beyond this, we can go back to, you know, rethinking it. But for peak summer right now, while we got everything in full bloom like this, I'm definitely gonna go ahead and make sure I do a full spraying. And that is pretty much it. We're gonna walk back across the top, but we're gonna open this up to like a full stream, and we're gonna spray. Got a bunch of damage up here too. We're just gonna spray down that hill a little bit further to get more out into the middle. And you can see this whole area back here. My wife hates these green hosta that just grow everywhere, but I treat this like it's a free nursery. And then of course we do have these broadleaf blue hosta over here, and so I can hit them real briefly, get enough on there so that it's a deterrent. Not necessarily worried about a little bit of damage back here. Overall, I think everything will be okay. And now we'll just do this and really rain some of that repellent down on everything. Make sure the backside of those hostas is getting it. Yep, that's about the end of the second pack. All right, everybody, we're going to call that good. I'll use my last couple little drops I got left. We'll hit a few of these. And I don't know if you can tell, I got hostas going all back through there. We got them everywhere. All right. That's it, everybody. Thanks for watching. Again, that was a unusual yard tour, I got to admit, but there you go. Now imagine I was doing that at some other property than my own, and you'd get an idea what my actual job is like. And so again, not a bad way to make a living. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed that one. I'll see you real soon in the next one.